Hi, my name is Madison Miller. Today I'm going to be presenting about child labor and Lewis Hine's work to end what is known as child labor today. First and foremost, according to the International Labor Organization, child labor is defined as any work that deprives children of their childhood, their potential, their dignity, and anything that is harmful to their physical and mental development. I chose this topic because I love kids, all kids. I'm the oldest grandchild, and all of my cousins are very young, and knowing as young as 4, a child going out and doing these hard, intensive labor jobs breaks my heart because that's an age of my cousin, and I couldn't imagine them going out and doing that kind of job. It's not for them. It shouldn't happen. I do want to show a picture of a 10-year-old girl. This is a 10-year-old girl. This picture is known as the cotton mill girl. She is trying to figure out how to work the machinery, and these machines are very hard to work, and them being so small, sometimes they have to climb up on them, and sometimes their hair gets stuck. They can become scalped, they can lose fingers. It's just very dangerous for them, a job that they should not be doing. Also, during my research, I found a song that a 14-year-old boy named Lloyd made. At the end of the song, it talks about how he wants to meet a pretty little girl and make her his wife, but I hope she's a millionaire because I ain't got a dime. And I'm going to play this for you. It's called the Cotton Picker's Song.
I have no care like a millionaire, no grief to make me blue, but I pull my sack from day to day and paddle my own canoe. I came out here from Texas to the state of the Golden West. My pop gets on the WPA 'cause he thought that was the best. They started talking ham and eggs, and that just suited me. I said goodbye to the cotton patch, there's no more spuds to see. We were all so happy and thought we were riding high, but they knocked the way out of ham and eggs, and if I stay out here I'll die. So I'll go right back to Texas and stay there all my life. I hope to meet with some pretty little girl and I'll ask her to be my wife. I'll try to make her happy and I'll love her all the time, but I hope she is a millionaire 'cause I ain't got a dime.
Very catchy song, but very disheartening that a 14-year-old boy is worried about making their wife happy because he doesn't have money. Very disheartening. What I found challenging about my research is I wanted to figure out if the parents had any control over what job their child got, if they were angry about this time, or if they were accepting of it. And I could not find anything about it, and I'm not really sure why, but that was very challenging during my research. Lewis Hine, which is the gentleman that devoted his life to ending child labor, creates powerful images with his photography to cultivate the idea of what child labor actually was. He's devoted to this because of his own experience as a child labor worker. He worked 13 hours a day, 6 days a week, and got $4 per week. Very, very disheartening. He then caught the public eye with his work, and change was then made. And what we know as the Fair Labor Standards Act controls all child labor things and has limits and requirements on their ages and stuff. And that created in 1938. So still in 2021, we are still utilizing this law that was made. Child labor was practiced throughout history, but it did reach a peak during the Industrial Revolution. The work consisted of miserable working conditions, like crowded and unclean factories, lack of safety codes and legislation, and long, long hours. These children were utilized because they were paid less, they were less likely to get organized into unions, and they were very small, so they can fit into the small nooks and crannies that an average adult-sized male could not get into, like a small cave in the mine. A 10-year-old boy can easily get into there. It's small for a reason. He shouldn't be in there. With children working these long, enduring hours, mean that they had less education. And they had no time for rest and play. So no education, they were illiterate. Being illiterate means you can't get those doctor jobs, banker jobs, owning a business jobs. So the factory life and other intense labor jobs were their whole source of income for the rest of their life because they were deprived of that education. It unfortunately took the Great Depression to not end child labor usage, but it significantly decreased the amount of children that were used in child labor. Because of this, during the Great Depression, a lot of adults lost their jobs, so the out of job adults were easily handed the children's job, which caused the children to get out of the factories, which in my view of things is a great thing. The Great Depression obviously was not a good time for anybody, but for the children, it ended up benefiting them because they weren't enduring those long hours, which meant that they could have an education. Today, we are still kind of using child labor in the agriculture business. They're using immigrant workers, children in the fields and in garment industries. They're continually using children to be less profit. A lot of citizens and policymakers are unaware of the true working conditions that children are facing, so it makes it difficult to control. They don't know what's true or not, and if they're not seeing it, then they can't put in any laws. A lot of them believe that these children were just making extra money. It was harmful money that was just being made extra for their family. Or they just turned a blind eye. They didn't even bat an eye about it. Louis Hine, with the help of him, he unfolded the ugly truth of what child labor was and devoted his career to make a difference and help these children. His father died young, which caused him to step up and be a financial aspect in his family. He worked in an upholstery factory, again, $4 a week, 13-hour days, 6 days a week. He then worked up to a janitor, which is a lot better than a factory. He then attended university extension classes, which there he met a man named Frank Manny, which he was the superintendent of an ethical cultural school in New York. And he then actually offered Louis a job as the nature study and geography educator and the school's photographer. So that was also a big step. Education helped him a lot in that. During the first 2 years of photography, it opened different opportunities and different doors, and he met different people, and he ended up becoming a freelance photographer for the National Child Labor Committee, which that was devoted to ending child labor as well. And until 1917, he spent a lot of time traveling from southeast to northeast to just the north, photographing children in different factories and unfolding the truth of their true working conditions. But it was not simple to get into these factories, so he ended up having to go undercover. A quote by the photo historian Dally Kaplan said, "Nattily dressed in suit, tie, and a hat, Hine, the gentleman actor and mimic, assumed a variety of personas, from a Bible salesman, postcard salesman, and industrial photographer making record of a factory machinery to gain entrance. When unable to deflect a confrontation with management, he waited outside of these buildings with his 50-pound photographic equipment and photographed the children coming and going. He also did little mini interviews with the children. They're very small, and he learned how to write in his pocket, so the management did not see what he was doing because he was there for other jobs. So he learned quickly to write in his pocket, and he did get some insight on some of his interviews with the children. He used these photographs in magazines, pamphlets, books, slide presentations, and even traveling exhibitions. Eventually, these images helped create and enforce child labor laws. Hine was definitely against child labor, not only because it was dangerous, but because education was not a factor back then. These children were deprived of their education needs. He believed, education helped his past, so he believed that education is the key. This is his words. Education is the key to a brighter future that all kids should have. And I truly believe that. I believe that education can take you places where you never knew you could go. After the National Child Labor Committee was founded in 1904 and their campaign was led, 14 laws were then created before the Fair Labor Standards Act was created in 1938, which this Fair Labor Standards Act, which was created, allowed a minimum ages of employment and the minimum hours to be worked by that child. And it was all regulated by federal law. And they grouped ages, so you had 14, 15, 16, 17, and then above 18 and above was considered adults. But under 14 usually did not work, but they were still grouped. It also allowed children an opportunity at education, an opportunity to go beyond an industrial factory worker or a miner. Hine was an abundance of many other supporters who fought big industries during this era. His documentation of the child labor had an immense impact on the society. It exposed the truth, and it helped other citizens really make a stand for children's rights. He wanted to produce change, and he was successful in that. He unfortunately died unknown, but now to this day, he is known for saving children. It affected me because, like I said, I love all children. And again, I believe education is so important. It can take you to places where you never thought you could go, and not having that education is vital. I mean, you have to have that education to go places and get into these big jobs. If you want to be a factory worker, that's okay, but at least the children now have a choice. Choices is what matters. I believe that you shouldn't be forced to do a labor-intensive job at a young age. A 10-year-old boy does not need to be in a mine. They need to be an adult, 18 or older, an adult to make those decisions. Those jobs can put your life at risk. I'm curious to investigate the use of child labor in today's age. I know there's laws, the Fair Labor Standards Act, to control child labor, but still it is being used undercover to this day. I'm curious at how they investigate that and regulate that. Thank you.